We all love sports, right? We see them as pure competition, a celebration of what humans can achieve. But what happens when the games we love are used to play a much more dangerous game? That's what we're digging into today, the powerful and often invisible line where international sports and political propaganda collide.
All right, let's get into it. First, we're going to talk about what makes sports such a positive force to begin with. Then, we'll peel back the curtain on its darker side with a concept called sports washing. We've got a killer case study to show you exactly how it works. And finally, we'll look at how the world is trying to fight back.
So, before we dive into all the heavy political stuff, it's super important to understand why sports have such a grip on us in the first place, because it's so much more than just a game.
I mean, think about it. Sports are woven into the very fabric of a healthy society. Yeah, on the surface, they're entertainment. But underneath all that, they teach us so much. How to persevere when things get tough, how to be a leader, how to communicate. And for so many of us, they're that essential escaper to de-stress. They're a huge part of how we grow as people. And look, this is not a new idea. As President Kennedy said, leaders have known for ages that the strength of a nation is often reflected on its playing fields. It's a sign of vitality, of spirit. But that powerful reflection can also be twisted, creating a distorted image for the whole world to see. So now, let's look at the flip side of that coin. How can this amazing, positive force be hijacked for a much, much darker purpose? This is where the game stops being just entertainment and starts being a political strategy. And this question is really the heart of our entire explainer today. Because when autocratic regimes look at the power of sports, they don't see community or perseverance. They see a golden opportunity. And that opportunity has a name: sports washing. It's a deliberate tactic. A government with, let's say, a terrible human rights record uses the glamour of a huge sporting event to launder its reputation on the world stage. It's all about pointing the world's cameras at a shiny new stadium to distract from what's really happening just outside the gates. And there is no better example of this than one of the most legendary sporting events of the 20th century. To really understand sports washing, we have to go back to the 1970s, to a country called Zaire.
So get this. In 1975, the dictator of Zaire, a guy named Mobutu Sese Seko, paid a staggering $10 million to host the heavyweight championship fight between Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. Now, this wasn't about a love of boxing. It was about using the biggest stage in sports to buy legitimacy and worldwide recognition for his regime. To get Mobutu's strategy, you have to understand who Muhammad Ali was at that time. He wasn't just a boxer. He was a global icon, an absolute hero to millions across Africa for standing up against the Vietnam War. As the artist Malik Bowens put it, Ali's value was way beyond the ring. By bringing Ali to Zaire, Mobutu was hoping that some of that heroic image would rub off on him.
And this is where you see the stark contrast. While the world's media was mesmerized by Ali and Foreman, the reality of Mobutu's Zaire was absolutely brutal. It was a kleptocracy, which is basically a government of thieves. Uprisings were crushed with force, and political opponents were publicly executed in stadiums to make sure everyone stayed afraid.
So you see this massive split screen. On one side, the facade broadcast to the world, a celebration of African power and pride. And on the other, the grim reality, a regime built on corruption and terror, with Mobutu getting filthy rich while his people suffered. And here's the unsettling part. For a while, it worked. The world saw the fight, not the kleptocracy. The rumble in the jungle was the ultimate act of sports washing.
But this isn't just a history lesson. This fight for the soul of sports is more relevant today than ever before. And now, the international community is starting to respond in more organized ways.
The Olympics have always been a political stage. Back in 1992, we saw its incredible power for good, with a reunified Germany and a post-apartheid South Africa competing. It was this amazing symbol of reconciliation. But fast forward to 2022, and the whole conversation shifts. The United States and its allies led a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Winter Games. Now, this didn't stop the athletes from competing, but it was about refusing to send officials, sending a clear political message about the Chinese government's human rights abuses. So, what can actually be done to fight sports washing? Well, experts usually point to a three-part strategy. First, those diplomatic boycotts, just like the one in Beijing.
Second, putting real pressure on the big governing bodies, we're talking about FIFA and the International Olympic Committee, to actually factor in human rights when they pick host countries. And third, holding the huge corporate sponsors who fund these events accountable for their role in all of it. But taking action like this is not simple, and public opinion is seriously divided. You can see there's a real split. On one hand, you've got significant support for boycotts as a kind of moral stand. But on the other hand, there's strong opposition from people who argue that it just politicizes sports and unfairly punishes the athletes who've trained their whole lives. And then there's a big group of people in the middle who are just undecided, not sure if these boycotts even work. It leaves the whole debate wide open.
And all of this leaves us with one critical question. Is it the governments, the sports leagues, the sponsors, the athletes, or is it us, the fans? As the lines between the game on the field and the politics behind it get blurrier and blurrier, figuring out who's really responsible for keeping sports true, well, that's the challenge we all face.